Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about United States President Donald J. Trump's Executive Order 13959. Now, this executive order prevents investment in Chinese communist military companies. So every company that's invested in anything to do with Chinese communist military operations or capability or development is now legal. Now, this is has a devastating effect on the American companies that are heavily invested in this, but it's effectively a declaration of war against China because they are ripping out the guts of the deal. And so this is the interesting part we're now at. This is the formal declaration of war that, as I said last week, China hadn't done us the courtesy of telling us that they are at war with us. Now, this is going to have impact in Australia as well, because we have any number of companies involved with the Chinese Communist Party. Trump has now made it illegal. It's going to affect everybody. The major Silicon Valley is going to suffer terribly. A lot of manufacturing is going to suffer. And so this is a declaration of war against the Chinese, and it's going to be fascinating to know exactly what happens. What's going to be next?
Do you think that he'll invoke that in the next 6 days?
It's already in.
It's already in, but
it's signed in. It's signed in. It's done.
So is that the military would sort of enforce that even after he's gone, or?
No. It's an economic weapon. It's an economic weapon. These companies now have to withdraw from any involvement in Chinese Communist Party, which is absolutely sensible and prudent.
Yeah,
it should have been done ages ago. It's certainly one of our policies. Anybody has anything to do with the CCP, that'll be an act of treason and sedition. How can you materially aid an adversary who has demonstrably attacked our nation? So we'll be doing the same thing. We wrote that up some time ago. The next bit that I think is really interesting is the Insurrection Act. Now, this is the act that allows the president to, amongst other things, suspend habeas corpus and basically continue governing until the threat of insurrection has been defeated. Now, all the steps have been put into place, and this is still open to Trump to do, including one of the steps, as I said last week, was to formally tell the insurgents to disperse. Now, this allows him to continue governing the United States. There is no requirement for an inauguration on the 20th because this is effectively a state of emergency. Now, this is not unusual. It's been rolled out 23 times in the US's history. So it's not an unusual thing. Most recently, 96, I think, George Bush Sr., the LA riots, he rolled it out. He considered doing it later as a result of one of the hurricanes. Trump threatened to do it in relation to some of the riots, but never did. So this rolling out the Insurrection Act is not anything unusual or new. Once again, the lamestream media will try to persuade you that it's something controversial and challenging. It's not. It's just part of the rules because they're smart. So it's going to be extremely interesting watching whether Trump rolls out the Insurrection Act, continues governing, utterly legal. Lincoln did it.
Yeah, and when Lincoln did it, just if you don't mind, he actually ended up, I think, jailing the Chief Justice at the time.
It was let's say, contributed to his night at the theatre. But it's been done before. It makes sense, particularly when you're under attack from an insurrection. And so they're two little things that I guess you won't hear on the news, but keep your eye out for both those things, Executive Order 13959 and the Insurrection Act, and the implications, the impact it's going to have on China and the United States.
Wasn't there another executive order or Protocol 52 or something where they were like, it was introduced after 9/11, where basically the president has the ability to, in the event of a significant emergency, basically dissolve the Congress, the whole of Congress and the Senate, and just control everything. I remember hearing that.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, I need to look up on that one. That's an interesting one. I doubt he's gonna pull any of this. I think that politics is a lot more boring than that, and the Trump era has been very entertaining, and it will continue. I just think that it'll continue in 4 years. They're going to go after Trump and all his supporters. We know that. They're already doing it. But you know what? It doesn't mean you stop what you're doing. What about in Australia, though? We've got a few different parties. Have you got anything to say about IMOP?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the heads up. That's right. Got a phone call from one of our regional coordinators. And apparently, now IMOP is the Informed Medical Options Party. And I'm a big fan of what they represent. We're very much in alignment with that. Your body, your choice. You get to say what goes into it. And I extended a friendly hand, and they chose to spit on it, which is interesting. Because I think it was 5 members of IPOP turned up to an A1 supporter group meeting and demanded that they have the right to vote on, on the positions within the supporter group, which I found funny and laughable.
Yeah.
They got their noses out of joint because at the Queensland state election, because apparently I ran in the seat of the leader of the IMOP party.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain as gently as I could that unless the minor parties all contested as many seats as possible and fed each other the preferences, none of us would ever get up, because there's no way that IMOP would get up with 50% plus 1 vote, which is required to win the seat. What she needed was as many minor parties to preference each other in order to get the numbers to get up. That's exactly what Labor does. It puts up bogus
parties
and independent candidates to direct preferences to them. It's a game that they play.
Like 9 of them.
But IMOP and their erudite leader decided that this was an insult, and she actually ran me up and insulted me and told me I had to ask her permission to run in her seat, which I thought was an interesting, if naive, view of a political leader. But anyway, so they've decided that they want to run. They want to run A1 now. We did some checking up, and it appears, I can't verify this just yet, but it appears that IMOP's been penetrated by a major party, and they're doing to IMOP exactly what they did to One Nation and what they did to Fraser Anning and what they did to everybody else. Yeah. And so what they're doing is they're using other parties, they're using cutaways, shills, to help attack A1 to bring us down, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's a difference between honest and naive. I'm honest but not naive, so we know exactly what's going on. So IMOP, I was happy to support you. You know, your philosophy's great. Unfortunately, you stink because you're too dumb. You're just too dumb. And I'm not upsetting the IMOP supporters. You people are good people, but your party's just too dumb to worth surviving. So I don't care anymore about IMOP. It's fine. We don't need them. Moving right along.
It's very frustrating. First off, that's exactly what a plant would say, Riccardo. You would tear other good parties down, wouldn't you? That's
as I said, I extend my hand.
Yeah, to the people.
I say hello until it's no longer worth my time and effort, and then I just drop it because I don't need them. They're a single issue party, and that's not a problem having a single issue party.
Yeah, that can be effective.
But when you're as stupid as that,
yeah.
Okay, well done.
We've talked about this phenomena with the psychology of people drawn to power. And we know how power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, from George Orwell. Why is it, and like we've covered this in the past with Fred Nile and his party and how that's imploding, and I hope they go through a renewal, but I just don't have a lot of faith in these party leaders. It's very frustrating, and a lot of people get very disillusioned with parties, and they don't like committing to any, because they see how the very people that get drawn to power are so corrupt. But what they don't realize is, and maybe we'll finish the show with this, they don't realize that if you don't get involved, this is going to happen. It's the inevitable conclusion. What's your take on all this? Why is it so many of these parties implode like this? Is it always...
Oh, no, look, I understand. Look, let's break it down into the punters out there that just want a decent party that they can trust to look after their best interest. And I understand why they are utterly shattered. They've been let down. They've been betrayed over and over and over and over again for decades. And as we were saying before the show, they're now voting for a jersey. See, in the old days, you'd play for a team because you knew Ray Price for Parramatta, and Ray was a hard man, and Peter Sterling. These were Parramatta players through and through, and so there's a connection with the player. Now, for those younger people in the audience, you won't know Ray Price or Peter Sterling, but watching those two turn up, the sort of guys that would have a beer and a cigarette at halftime and go out and crack skulls again. The league in the old days was brutal. But anyway, he used to follow the team, because the team and the people. Yeah. But these days, it's there's no loyalty. They chop and change and you start to play for a jersey. Well, what's happened with the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Nationals, and not so much the Greens because they've been dead for a long time. But you're voting for a coloured jersey now because the players aren't the players that they used to be.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
And so the average elector out there sort of looks at the blue and they go, oh, I vote Liberal. But then if they knew who was wearing that jersey, they wouldn't vote for him. Oh, I vote Labor, I vote for Red. If they knew who was in the jersey, they wouldn't vote for them.
Yeah.
And so those people are utterly disenchanted.
Yeah.
And I get it. It hurts.